Good evening, ladies. It is week 7 of Mom Dreams Book Club, and I am so excited that we have finished our first book. So, for those of you who did not know, we have been reading Ariel Gore's F Happiness. I'm not gonna say it this time. And it has been a journey of learning, application, seeing how it applies to our lives. From it, we've journaled, we've shared our thoughts, we've probably done some soul searching to figure out what it is going to look like as we move forward. But before anything, I just want to tell you thank you for being a part of this journey with me. I feel like that it was a good learning opportunity for me because let's list the things. So I usually read books faster. So I had to really be intentional about slowing down and being more mindful as I read. It made me see where this information applies, and I had to sit with these readings for a week. And so I had an opportunity to really digest everything that was coming with information we were reading. It was different from what I expected. You could tell she's outside of the box and she does not follow the rules, but it wasn't a book that was hard to read. She didn't do a whole lot of cursing. I think there were maybe 3 curse words in the whole book. But I feel like she put you in a position to think and make decisions for yourself based on her personal experience, the experience of other women, and her research. So I love that in this situation, she was not trying to convince you of one thing or the other or make you agree with her. She was trying to give you valuable information so that you could use it for yourself. So I will tell you today, we are going to do a lot of quotes because she tied this book in a nice bow, and there were so many good quotes in this last section of the book that we read. But it was just putting everything together that we are more in control of our happiness, our joy than we realize. And I think when we become mindful of that, that's when we can begin to make small steps toward progress. She talks about how what we think the opposite of happiness is typically not actually what it is. She talks about how it's not really depression, it's not sadness, because if it was or opposite, it would be difficult for it to coexist. But we know the reality that we could be extremely happy and experience sadness at the same time, depending on what we're focusing on and where we are in life. So I'm going to start with one of those quotes because she talks to a large amount of women, getting their insights. They shared their journals, their happiness journals, their joy journals with her. And a lot of those quotes and a lot of those entries she used in the book. Um, so I think it's important to realize that you would think, or we're taught to think that we are the happiest when we get that new job or we go on the extravagant trip or things like that. But the lasting happiness actually happened with the small day-to-day things. What she said was in nature, with friends or children, working or reading, we are happy when we are dynamically engaged with our lives. We are happy when we're following threads of thought and activity we're curious about, unconcerned where those threads will lead. It is a moving force. So, why is that important? Because most of us do not live our day to day lives getting new jobs or going on extravagant trips or, suddenly getting a raise at work. We have to choose joy in the small moments. And sometimes that means being fully present in the most mundane, simple tasks. She talks about a time where she put it to work. Her son, 6 months old, she hated doing laundry. And she said, you know what? I'm going to put some of the things I've learned to action. So I'm going to go in this basement, choose to be fully present and not as negative minded as I usually am when I have to do laundry, and see where it takes me. So as she was doing laundry and folding the baby clothes, it made her think about her daughter who was already in college and how small when she used to be that small. It made her get lost in thought. It made her be fully present, not lost where she's spacing out, wishing she was somewhere else, but taking in where she is in life, where she lives, her career, this book she was almost finished with, where she's applying the things that she learned. So I think that it's important for us to acknowledge that we are as happy as we are present. What does that mean? Although there are going to be things in our lives that we are not happy about, that we are not enjoying, that make us sad, that make us angry, there's something about being fully present in the regular tasks. Like for me, as I was reading this book and we were closing out the school year with my daughter, and I talk about how talkative she is on the way to school, and when I pick her up, well, sometimes in the morning, is she's 13 now, so that's changing. But especially when she gets out of school, because she has so much to share, she wants to share about her day, and it's those things that we take for granted. And it made me more mindful. It made me want to desire to be more present in those moments because she's only going to be 13 once. I'm only going to hear about seventh grade 1 year. That year is gone. Next year will be in eighth grade, and I'll be learning about eighth grade. But these moments are fleeting and they do not last forever. So we have to take the opportunities to be present in these moments and value the blessings that we have, whether it be through relationships, whether it be through our jobs, where we live, whatever that means. Being able to go on a hike not too far from your home, or go on a walk, whatever those things are that center you and bring you back to the present, but also give you an awareness of what you can be grateful and thankful for. It is a beautiful thing. So she covered so much. So let's talk about, she said, the women who were happy. The women who reported being happiest were the women who had the self esteem, the basic resources, and the courage to question and often reject the scripts for female happiness they had been handed. These women had been able to step back and consider their own desires outside the boundaries of established expectations. I mean, that so goes back to that F, fear, and obedience that I wrote about in my blog about 2 weeks ago, because we have to be willing to reject the things that don't work. Yes, maybe it worked for someone, but that doesn't mean it's going to work for you. We have to be willing to reject those expectations of us, especially if it's not who we are, it's who we've become to make others happy. And I'm not saying that we don't make adjustments for relationships that we're in, but there's a difference between making adjustments and completely changing who you are or not being who you are. So it's difficult to be happy if you're not you. You were created to be you, your personality, how you think, how you move, how you process information. Yes, we are in a constant state of growing and changing, but there are some core parts of you that you should not change. It comes from that people pleasing. You don't want people to be mad at you. You want people to feel valued, and that's good. There's nothing wrong with that. But what are you sacrificing? Your self-esteem. Are you valuing who you are enough to set boundaries as you adjust? Are you considering what you need as you adjust? The women who were happy were able to write new scripts for themselves. In the spirit of curiosity and experimentation, they had freed themselves from the past and were willing to commit to new paths and new visions. The women who were happy were optimists, but they weren't perfectionists. In some cases, they had failed in profound ways, but they had failed on their own terms. The quality that predicted happiness then was a kind of openness, a childlike curiosity, coupled with a very grown up understanding of self respect and self protection. Y'all, I could so relate to that quote because I used to be a perfectionist. Because of relationships that were based on performance, because I didn't want to be a burden, because I was a people pleaser. My focus a lot of the times was doing things perfect. But what is perfect? Who set the standard for perfection? If I'm trying to live up to a standard of perfection, clearly it's not my standard, because if I did it my way, it would be nothing like whatever this standard I was holding for myself. So, who set the standard? Who said that was perfect? So, perfection is, what are you really reaching for? To be fully accepted, to avoid being flawed, to avoid being human. That's what perfection, you want to do everything so well that you don't disappoint, make mistakes, and you lose your humanity. And so, in this space of being more comfortable and confident with who I am, no, who I was, accepting it, who I am, and who I am becoming, part of that was releasing whatever that standard was and where it came from, because it did not come from me. It did not come from inside of me. Most of those standards of perfection came from how I was raised, the environment I was raised in, or culture, or what they said, whoever they are said it should be, how things should be. And the reality is, when you are pursuing that standard of perfection that comes from wherever it came from, you're going to fail. And so that's why she's talking about, it's better to fail on your own terms, where you are conscious and aware of your needs and who you are, than to fail trying to reach a standard that is unrealistic. And the person that set the standard probably doesn't live up to that standard. And I can say to that from a religious perspective, because a lot of that perfectionism came from religion for me. I am a believer, but I had to learn how to transition from rules and religion to relationship, because my life was rules, and we weren't taught about the love of God, and we weren't taught about that relationship and that intimacy. And it's through that intimacy that, like, your life begins to change. It's not about making sure you don't make a mistake, because the reality is you're going to. And I remember talking previously about how when I made a mistake, I swung for the fences. I did, because I was so constrained in all of those rules, what I could not do, that I was unable to see what I could do. I had other things I could, but it was so much pressure to do the right thing all the time, that when I popped from the pressure, I didn't do little things that were on that list. I went above and beyond just to receive relief, to feel like that I was human. Like it's okay for me to make a mistake, but I didn't make little mistakes. I did something big. And so, why even create that type of environment for yourself, for your relationships, or for your children? Everyone is going to make mistakes. No one is perfect, and reaching for that state of perfection is always going to lead to disappointment, because it is not realistic. And I realized, as I let go of the pressure and the rules, I became a better person. I became better at guiding and teaching my children. I became a better friend. I became a better wife. I made a lot less mistakes when I let go of whatever that standard was and where it came from. It was not serving me. It was not serving me well. And so I had to release it. So I share that because I think it's so important for us to have an awareness of the things that we need to release. There are some things that we are carrying that were given to us, taught to us, because that was what they knew. They didn't know any better. And we have carried it to this point, and we can see that it's no longer serving us, but we are afraid to let it go. Let it go. Be okay with figuring out what it should be. And you figure that out through living, you figure that out through experience, you figure that out sometimes through making mistakes, but it is worth the process, because you will find that your life is more fulfilling knowing that you are living according to the rules that you have created because of your own experience. Not what your parents say you should do, not what your husband is saying you have to do. Though those words and how they feel is important and it's valid, if your entire life is guided by the expectations, rules, and wants of other people, and you are nowhere in that equation, you're not going to live a fulfilled life. Take it from me. It's not going to happen. So yeah, so she covered some big things in this chapter. Um, and one of the things that I think that so many women struggle with because of our past, because of our mistakes, we do not believe we deserve to be happy. Now, being happy does not mean that everything is exactly the way you want it to be. Remember, we talked about how happiness and sadness, happiness and anger, happiness and disappointment can coexist. There's some things that I am happy about, and there's some things I am upset about, but I am not living in that emotion all the time, every day. And if I think about it too long or if I sit in it, absolutely, I can find things to get angry about or sad about or frustrated about or unhappy about. But I am choosing to be aware of those things, work through those things, or acknowledge those things, whatever those things require. But I am not living in those moments because then I miss what's happening in my present. And what I'm finding is there's so much good happening in my present that if I waited, the good outweighs the bad. Now, have there been seasons of my life where it felt like there was more bad than good? Yes. And it probably was. But does that rob me of the opportunity to be aware of the things I'm grateful for? No, if unless I let it. But it doesn't have to. And so it is work, but I would rather be working towards fulfillment and joy than living in a constant state of anxiety and anger and depression. And when I talk about that, I'm not negating that there are some people that experience mental health. They have been through such traumatic experiences that it is difficult for them to transition from those states to a state of joy, and from those states to a state of happiness. But one thing we have learned just from writing our joy journals, just from reading this book, is that we have to be intentional about what we desire. So I may be in a sad, hard space, but my desire is that I live in more joy moments than I live in my grief and my sorrow. How do I do that? That's a part of the vision. Part of what we were talking about writing the vision was being intentional about how we want our lives to look. There may be moments where we don't feel joy or we don't live in that, but how do I get to that place I desire? I desire to live in a state of joy. I desire that. So when I'm not there, what am I doing to get back there so that I can be present, so that I can enjoy my family, so that I can enjoy my passion, so that I can go for that walk and enjoy the sun and the birds chirping, whatever those things are that bring you the most joy. Sometimes when we are not reaching towards that space, it's hard for us to enjoy the things that even bring us joy. So how do we get there? That is part of the vision. Vision is not just career and where I'm going to live and how much money I make. Vision is spiritually, emotionally, physically, my state, my health. That is a part of the vision. Because if I am not emotionally, physically, and mentally healthy, how can I truly be present in all the areas of my life? How can I truly experience fulfillment? It's almost impossible. So another thing that she talks about is about a release of our past. And I'm not talking about release of past, like forget about what you've experienced or what you've gone through. That's not what I'm talking about. Releasing of the past is giving you permission and freedom to live in your present, to move forward. And sometimes we need permission to do that because of the decisions that we've made and how they've negatively affected others, because of the bad decisions that we've made that have negatively affected us and how our lives have turned out. And part of that comes with full acceptance of the things you cannot change. I cannot change all the mistakes that I've made up until this point. There's nothing I can do to go back in time and redo those moments. But I can be aware and conscious of those decisions. Where was I mentally when I made those decisions? What was my why? I am not that person anymore, but I can identify where I was and why I made those decisions. And my desire is to not avoid hard things or even avoid mistakes. It's not my intention to make mistakes, but my goal is not to avoid making mistakes. That's perfectionism. My goal is to be as present as I am here in this moment, to be as healthy as I can be, so that as I make decisions, I'm making decisions from a healthy place. And ultimately, that is going to make my life better and make my family lives better. So part of the process is full acceptance and not blaming other people for the decisions that you made, but also not blaming yourself because of the condition you were in. You can fully accept what has happened, meaning there's nothing I can do to change it. And that looks different for everyone. That for me was therapy. That for me was doing the trauma work, really acknowledging how my experiences as a PK and as a young mother and as a young wife and as a person trying to figure all those seasons of life, how that impacted my thought process, my decision making, and how some of it has reaped positive rewards in my current life. And some of those areas I am being mindful so that I don't move in that same mindset or that same thought process because it does not reap good things. But I'm still a work in progress, but I'm not trying to be perfect. I've given that up, happily giving that back to the little girl that felt like she had to make people proud, to make people accept me, to be loved. I thought I had to be perfect. Now I am loved, perfect or not. I don't need the acceptance of others. That is not a necessity for me. What's important to me is that I am healthy and that I am raising a daughter to be healthy emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. That's what's important to me. My perfection is not a priority. Her healthy growth is more important to me, and my healthy growth, continuing in that space of health, because I understand how my condition, where I am, impacts everybody I'm connected to, from the people that I am in the home with, to the people I work with, to my extended family, to my friends. My health impacts them, but most importantly, my health impacts me. How can I be the best woman first? Because I was a woman first, mother, wife, employee, employer, all of those things if I am not healthy. So operating in that space is so important. She says, we were taught to ignore our own oppression, smile in false happiness to make our partners comfortable, our children comfortable, our parents comfortable. But oppression is trauma, and trauma can't be forever repressed. We have a right to be angry. There is a power in angry, and we've learned to use that weapon, that tool. We tore down walls. And I have to say, for myself, even accepting or acknowledging that I was angry, I was calm, I was even tempered, but in my heart, I was so angry about how unfair it was and not have being able to pinpoint what needed to change or what needed to be better. And it wasn't even that I needed to be better. I needed an awareness of myself that I was not taught. I needed the ability to communicate who I was, how I felt, where I wanted to be. I needed to be able to identify that I don't like where I am, and there's nothing wrong with that. Even though I am grateful for what I have and I am blessed, I can still look at things and be like, I want better for myself. I want better for my babies through me. That's okay. But it was through that anger, being willing to acknowledge it, that change actually happened. And the process was hard. It was not easy. I am not going to sell you the story that the process was easy. It was not. But I can say going through the process has reaped more reward for me, for my family, and for my relationships than I could have ever imagined. The one who lived in fear and obedience. So think about the people in your life who are unwilling to go against the mold for what's best for them. Those are the people that are living in fear and obedience. And we don't judge them for it. We just choose differently for ourselves. The ones who lived in fear and obedience were hardly rewarded for their cool self protection. They died with scowls on their faces, heartbroken like the rest of us, despite the protection they were promised in exchange for their freedom. Happiness is a kind of openness we have learned. So choose the risky road of power and vulnerability. Be done with dull things. Take your life back. Free yourself from habits of anger and compliance, smoking self destruction. Eyes wide open to the world. As it is, we grieve. And in the midst of it all, we rejoice. That is so powerful. And it gives us our power back to say that we are in more control than we realize, that we can make the decision to move on or move past or let go, whatever that need is for you in your life. We can write our own scripts, write our own stories, take stock of all the things that have made us unhappy, and we can follow the threads of joy too, like sparks flying from the campfire to see where they land. We can create a liberation. Every emotion that we feel is real, is the truth. So we open to love or work or art that feels expansive. There is no happily ever after. There is only meditation, action, change, friendship, idea, inspiration, creation. All power to joy, to change, to inspiration, to adaptation, to creation, to remaking the world as we dream it. But to remake the world as we dream it, sometimes there has to be a remaking in us, a willingness to take more control over where we are and where we would like to be. It was so beautiful to read. So I felt like she gave us facts and data and research, but in the end, she wanted to say, it's up to you. That you are the decision maker in this. And what I'm excited about is that as we have transitional time between this book and the next book, we're going to walk through what that looks like. Because reading information and feeling inspired is great. Woo! But it's the application that moves us from where we are to where we desire to be. So I am going to leave you with this. We have effed happiness. And we are choosing radical joy in the ways that are necessary for us so that we can continue to show up in spaces fully who we are and continue to show up in spaces with an awareness that we are still growing and developing no matter our age, and that we have something positively to offer. But first, sometimes we have to do the work within ourselves. So I hope you all have an amazing Tuesday. I hope you are encouraged, uplifted, and you are inspired as we transition from information to application. So you will see things in the Facebook group because we're going to work this thing out together and we're going to walk through it in each section to make a conscious decision to identify those areas where we desire different or more, and then figure out how we're going to get there. And it's not going to be sudden, it's going to be one thing at a time, one change at a time, one revelation at a time, a little bit more awareness at a time. It's a process, but it is worth it. I love you, ladies. Welcome, Mom Dreams Book Club. We have one in the books, and I hope you have a wonderful night. Bye.